It's entirely up to you. I don't know what an intro looks like, so
I'm gonna wing it. You ready?
I'm ready for you to wing it, Gray.
All right. Welcome everyone to our very first episode of our brand new podcast, Campfire Bandy, where we interview people to tell us their story. And my very first guest is my own brother and possibly future co-host of this podcast, Nathan Cook. Nathan is brother, dungeon master, current scholar, soon to be husband. Nathan, what's up?
Oh, just sitting here looking at you, looking at that beautiful mustache. Things coming.
Call it the whisker biscuit.
Like, not the whisker biscuit. My God.
So this is gonna be a cool talk because you and I know each other very well, but
Inside
I felt
and out.
like it was appropriate to bring you on first because when schooling and all the other many things that you have going on in your life calm down, hopefully you'll be able to come on as I don't even want to call you, I guess co-host isn't really a sidekick because we will be equivalent, but we'll both be doing the interviews of super cool people, hopefully. So
Yeah. Just a busy boy right now.
yeah, absolutely. So tell me about that. I mean, you've got like 2 or 3 things going on that are engulfing your sphere right now.
Absolutely. I'm getting married this summer, which is super busy. Like, there's just so many different things involved, and it's like every time that I'm like, oh yeah, that's coming up, and then it's like, that's coming up. It's just like, oh, have you talked to this person yet? Have you got this scheduled? Have you got this paid for? And you're just like, I don't know where my shoes are right now, much less where anything else needs to be.
And everybody on the other end is like, Nathan's not got back to me and I've not heard a single thing from him.
I just don't know why he's just so neglectful. We're trying to get this shit on the whoa. And I'm like, hey, I'm trying. Like, back off. So,
and that's on top of the other endeavor that you undertook, I guess. You've been doing a year now.
Yep, I'm in my second semester at college after never thinking that I would go to college. So, and that's stressful in and of itself because I'm like, hey, I'm not a good student. I'm not going to go to school like ever. And then I'm doing my best, and I've all A's and B's thus far, but it's not for, totally engulfing all of my time, just constantly reading or writing something. And I knew it would be difficult, but I didn't realize just how much it was going to just engulf my everything.
I mean, I think a lot of people think that they just are not capable or that they're not a good student. And it is like when you apply yourself, it really is just a matter of doing things and staying committed and turning things in. Mm-hmm. However, I don't want to be the person that says, oh, if you apply yourself, son, then you can get anything done. I honestly think that just being a little older and a little bit more mature helps a ton.
Yeah, I agree. I think, when I first graduated high school, it was like, well, what are you going to do? And I never thought anything beyond that. Like, I was just like, I just got to get through high school. Like, the end. I never was like, oh, what do I want to do? There was never any contemplation. Like, there was never any forethought. I was just like, I gotta get to Friday before I can think about Saturday. Like, so When I graduated high school, it was like, well, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I guess I go to school, but I don't know what for or where. And my grades were like non-existent. That would involve me actually having to attend class to be able to make grades. So, yeah, I went to Cleveland State straight out of high school with no reason. Like I didn't want to go. I didn't know what I was going for. I was just like, I don't want to be doing anything. So that
is it kind of like, this is what's expected of me. This is the natural, whatever.
Absolutely. It was, well, you got to do something. So you've got like 3 options. You can either go to school, you can join the workforce, or you can go to the military. And all 3 at one point or another were pretty heavily considered. So, but I was like, oh, well, I'll do school because that seems like the most attractive of the 3 options. But I'd done nothing to prepare myself to think that I could just do that. And I was just like, oh yeah, I'll just, who cares? So yeah, that was the big doozy there.
Well, tell me about
there. And
what about your high school days? Because you have a pretty noteworthy high school history amongst our closest friends, and I was a little earlier, kind of on the outset. But you had a regular old fight club going there for a while.
Oh, I was just a textbook hooligan, just a ruffian. Yeah, I just stayed in trouble all the time. I've always been mouthy, I guess. And so I've been like a class clown pretty much my entire life. And so if I wasn't in trouble for mouthing off or trying to make other people laugh at the most inappropriate times, like we'll be in the middle of doing something very important, like a test or somebody's talking or whatever, and I'm just making fart noises and trying to get people to laugh and not worry about stuff. So if I wasn't doing that, the flip side of that behavior was also whoever wanted it can come get it. I've just gotten into way too many fights just for really no reason other than just being an angsty teenager.
Well, and I assume now you and I have both talked extensively about ADHD. Yours is a little different than mine, I think. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't think that mine is as severe as yours. And I say that to try and not take away from people that actually struggle with it, because mine is mostly just focus issues. Mm-hmm. I've never really had the hyperactivity, but I mean, we've talked a lot about how in high school you weren't really getting any focus on the fact that you had that going on and it was keeping you from focusing in school and stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, like, ADHD has been a thing that people have not understood for a very long time. And they made leaps and bounds before I was even, in elementary school into understanding it. But even in that, it still felt as though it was in its infancy, because I was still very much like, oh, we'll just put him on Adderall or whatever. And it's just like, do I want to be in a vegetative state and just like do nothing? Or do I want to not be on that and get nothing done? Like, it's super productive and lose like personality, or, get all of my shit done or wait, you know what I mean? I'm doing one or the other. They're parallels. And I just, I don't know. That was my biggest issue early on, was couldn't figure out what I needed to do, like medication wise, this, that, and the other. And I've not been on medication since I was probably in elementary or middle school, something like that. So, just kind of learn to cope, get older and mature and figure out you're in charge of you, and you got to figure out how to handle yourself despite what's going on.
Yeah.
So,
well, what was that progression like? Because I know, when there is angst and stuff involved, a lot of times that the punitive measures come out, but there's not a lot of help, especially, I mean, I feel like at least in our hometown in the South, it's much more about we're going to punish you for fighting and you need to straighten up, but we're not going to spend as much time focusing on whatever you may have going on that is causing this. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I know that you kind of had a journey from, you know, fighting, and you have probably ADHD going on, but it's not, nobody's really focusing on that until eventually you end up, you know, people, you know, helping you, I guess, but then it came with some stigmas, it seemed like, for you.
Yeah. So when it first started out, I think I was diagnosed when I was either in first or second grade, which is about average, at least in boys. So I believe it was second grade. So it starts out and there's all this intervention and things that go in, you know, you get an IEP, you have all these, you know, whatever. And all this stuff that goes into, like, basically the school system and everybody, teachers, whoever, parents, are all going to make a game plan. It's like, all right, we're going to need to do extra things to make sure that basic things are getting done. And for me, that was a lot of, I had a lot of negative social connotation with that. I was like, I don't want to be like categorized or grouped with, you know, whatever, you know, like it was very like, I'm very aware of my situation, and certain other peers were aware, but it wasn't like just widespread out known, like, oh yeah, Nathan's struggling with all this. He's got to go get pulled out of class to go and do extra math work or whatever to keep him on par, or at least narrowly skating by with everybody else. And so I was resentful of that, but looking back, I know that, like, I need that. Like, even now, like, I'm in college and I'm taking college level math classes, and I'm like, I'm doing homework, and then he's like, do all the odd problems. I'm like, I'm doing the odd and the even. I'm going to have to get tutoring. I'm going to have to go in the office hours of my professors. Like, just to stay scooting by, I've got to be double down on shit.
Yeah. It's a lot easier to admit that when you're an adult, though. When you're, you know, when you're in elementary school, when you're in high school, that is your universe.
Yeah. So going from elementary school, it wasn't as big of a deal because when you're younger, you don't really, like, it's not as integrated, I guess. But once you hit like middle school and you start developing into a person and you start coming up, you know, oh, this is, you know, you have ideals, you have perceptions of yourself and others, you know, all of that gets into play. I got really, really angry about it. I was mostly mad that I was having to do it, for one, and I was also mad that that was my circumstance. And that, coupled with, you know, the divorce of my parents, adds to already pre-existing. So if it's like, okay, well, now you're a teenager. Okay, well, now you have a disability, and there's a divorce. And so it's just like, boop, boop, boop. Let's get fighty real quick for you can't say no reason, but you can also be like, why, you know?
Yeah.
Looking back, at least you can.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you about that because, you know, that's, we both have ADHD in common, and we also both have divorce in common. And, you know, I think back a lot about how that affected me going through school in different ways. You know, there's multiple divorces for me, but, you know, the divorce for you, I think, was a little bit more drawn out. There was a little bit more conflict, and it was at more of like a prime age for it to really affect you.
Yeah. So, yeah, my mom and dad got divorced when I was between 7 and 8. And so that was it was basically a catastrophe because, like, divorce is never necessarily a good thing, but divorce, as you and I both know, can be handled in different ways. Mm-hmm. Because just by the divorces that we have been a part of and the divorces that have happened to people that are very near to us, we can see how those that fallout looks. Sometimes it's more cordial and it's done with like, oh yeah, we'll do what we have to do. I don't really like you or whatever. But between my parents, it was very much, hey, I don't like you a lot. I actually hate you. Mm-hmm. This is a war. and anything that I can do to spite the other is going to happen. And both parties are at fault for that, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's just, it's just shitty.
Mm-hmm.
So, so there's that, along with everything else. So it just kind of, I guess it just compiled into one volatile mix. I say volatile, it's not like I killed anybody, you know, but I was definitely in trouble a lot, you know?
Yeah. Well, and if you think about it, you know, I mean, I guess you didn't really go home because they were separated, but you would go back to environments that had kind of toxic and volatile things happening. And, you know, that you kind of reflect everything that you take in as a child. You reflect that back out into the world. And that goes on almost, you know, honestly, until you're like in your early 20s when your brain is done developing. Really all you're doing is taking information that you take in and reflecting it back out. And I mean, I remember, you know, my dad and his now ex-wife had a really toxic relationship and a really toxic divorce. And I never really had the confidence growing up to kind of directly reflect that back out and take all that anger and aggression that I felt and put it back out into the world. I mean, I was, as much as I hate to admit it, I was probably more of a crier than a fighter, because I was told from a young age that you better stay in line and you better not get in trouble. So instead of letting all that come back out, I swallowed it all and kept it all inside. But I mean, I remember, you know, my dad and his ex-wife were going through that, and I would have to be at the house and stuff around them, and seeing my dad probably more hurt than I'd ever seen him in my life. It, you know, I kind of went through like a stage of, I guess, depression, even though I was super young, I guess like 12, 13, and didn't really understand it. But, you know, that toxic environment, I do think, caused me to make some decisions, like getting into a toxic relationship that went on for almost my entire high school career, and, you know, just do another dumb stuff that wasn't necessarily angsty, but was almost like in a depressive state, I guess, on the other side of it. So, yeah, I mean, I guess in a way you can't really blame your parents, or at least that's the way I process it, because, you know, in thinking about the divorce and stuff, you know, I love all the parents that I've had, and I still call most of them parents, but, you know, as you get to be an adult, you learn that they're just fully functioning kids, you know, that can that can drink and buy a house, and and have children, and they're kind of just figuring it out as they go too. So
when you're younger, it's like, oh, well, these people obviously know everything. You know, you don't know anything else. That person is an adult, therefore they must meet the criteria of being a wise person that you should. But in actuality, like, they're just, I mean, we're closer to their age now than, I mean, they were super young.
Yeah.
Oh, in almost all of the instances, I'm not, you know, not that old, but I'm old enough to be like, oh yeah, the maturity level there is relatively on par at this point. And I'm like, you had no clue. It's like y'all were doing your best. Wasn't great. Be honest, wasn't the best, but you were doing your best most of the time. But yeah, you said that comment about, you know, that you know, you were more of a crier than a fighter. You kind of held it in. A lot of mine, I would consider myself a crier more than a fighter, but I getting incorporated with back to the ADHD thing, when in middle school was when most of this stuff kind of manifested for me, at least. And a lot of that, you know, like I was talking about, that social implication of having a disability, and what other kids and stuff, and kids are ruthless.
Oh yeah.
And the more that came out, and the more that kids like found out stuff that I was having to do and go through and all this, that, and the other, they would be, you know, they'd pick at me, they'd make fun of me and do whatever. And that's when the flip of the switch happens. Like, it's like, oh, well, now I'm mad. Like and I'm not going to sit there and just like pout and cry. Like if you're pushing me and making fun of me, dude, like what do you expect? I'm going to have to do something. And so, yeah, that was a lot of it for me. And honestly, a lot of fights that I had been in around that time period were not only for myself, but a lot of them, I say a lot, a few of them at least, were for Wes, who was also going through the same thing as I was, almost like mirrored with the disability and the school setting and the family stuff almost identically at the exact same time, except Wes wasn't gonna, he was gonna be very quiet. He'd let it hit him and it would roll off. But it bothered me, at least on the outside, it bothered me more than it bothered him. Mm-hmm. And then I inserted myself several times because I'm like, dude, you're not gonna do that. Not to Wes. He's as good as they get. Like he's super pure. So a lot of that came from that. So
well, so now you got to tell the story that you always tell about the Wes fight. You know which one I'm talking about.
I know exactly.
Don't use the guy's name, but you can use Wes's name.
Okay. So, talking about how we have to go at school, do extra programs and things like this to try to keep us on par with the rest of our peers. Wes, who is our cousin, Wes was in an after-school tutoring program with me. And there was this asshole. We'll call him asshole.
I like it.
If we can't use his name, let's use his name. He's an asshole.
He was at least an asshole then. Doesn't really. In this story, it doesn't matter how he is now.
I don't care who he is now.
There he is.
You burned your bridge. So he was messing with Wes, and we were lined up in the hall, and we were about to go to the cafeteria to do something. I don't remember what it was. And he had been just slapping, like we had been on the other side of the room because things are alphabetical still, even in this after-school program. My last name is Cook. Wes's last name is Snyder. So we're far apart. But I can see it happening across the room pretty much all after-school program as this dude has been like pushing Wes because he sits behind him. He's slapping him on the neck and doing whatever. And it's just, I'm sitting there trying to focus on A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And I'm just sitting there boiling, looking at him messing with Wes. And so they get out in the hall and I'm like, hey, stop. And well, correction. He slaps Wes one more time in the back of the neck while we were in the hall. And I interject and I'm like, leave him alone, essentially. And he's like, ooh, what are you going to do? What are you? And so I grabbed him by the back of his pants and the top of his collar like a cartoon and slammed him head first into the wall next to us. I just grabbed him and chucked him.
Gave him the finisher.
Yeah, he's on a stone cold stunner there. Anyway, yeah, he hits the wall and he's like, ooh. He's all like confused because he just has been concussed and, fair enough. So I look at Wes and I'm like, if there's anything that you want to do to feel as though you've been made even, now is your opportunity to do so. And Wes, being the gentle soul that he is, but the gentle soul who had been essentially tormented for the past 45 minutes, went to fake kick him while he was down. And he's slumped and sitting at the wall. So he's on his butt, but the wall's behind him. And Wes takes like a half step back and slings his leg up like he's going to kick him, but he stops short. But fate had other plans that day. And Wes's untied shoe launched from his foot and just plowed into this asshole's face. And Wes, I'll never forget how just jovially he just erupts into laughter. He thought it was hysterical, but I don't know. It was perfect. He just kicked him in the face inadvertently. And I picked up Wes's shoe and I handed it to him and we left. And,
I just imagine like the Nathan West tag team, like Nene the Bar comes out with West the Dream Snyder, and you guys have got this guy up against the turnbuckle and he's slumped, and you've picked him up and you've slammed him into the turnbuckle and tossed him, and he slumps down, and West just comes up full blown Shawn Michaels roundhouse kick, but he's like this far away from his face, and the guy thinks that he's safe, but that shoe goes.
It was like it was meant to be. Like, I don't know how to tell it other than it was just like, that was what was exactly was supposed to happen right then. His shoe just like ejected from his foot and went fast. Like, it looked like it hurt. It just was like, hit him square in the damn head. And Wes, I mean, you know, Wes wasn't intending to actually kick him, but when he did, when the shoe did hit him in the face, he was like, I mean, what he couldn't do anything but laugh at that point, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like Wes is like, no, I'm not going to take revenge. But Fate was like, no, take revenge here. And just carried that shoe on along for him. So yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah. Yeah. And it, you know, thinking back to being younger, I don't think you ever would have known that Wes was being bullied like that. But in talking to you, you know, I mean, really, you both were. You know, you may have stood up for yourself more, but it doesn't really seem like that slowed things down much. People still gave you shit every day.
Until I got into high school, I had to have, you know, little scraps here and there along the way. But by the time that I was about a freshman, after I'd had a couple of like more serious fights that were more than just a few punches back and forth, it was a little more prolonged.
Yeah.
Did I get a little bit? I don't know if I want to say a reputation, because that has a lot of, you know, ooh about it. But once I got to high school, it was more like, okay, yeah, I mean, quit fucking winning, you know. Like, how many more times does this have to happen before everybody gets, you know, on the same page? But yeah, Wes especially, he just super passive. He's just not like, nah,
yeah,
not gonna bother me. I'll just sit here and be the bigger man at the age of 12. And
honestly,
I'm happy for him. More power to him. Very wise beyond his years. But I was like, they're gonna keep doing this. And if he's not gonna do anything, then I'm gonna do something, because this is not right.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there's a balance to be found there. You know, you can't let people keep doing that to you. But also fighting gets you in a lot of trouble. So
yeah. Oh yeah.
I've thought about it a lot, because for whatever reason, I was fortunate enough to really not get picked on that much. So I didn't really have to face those situations. But it, you know, in being the type of person that didn't get picked on, it's always blown my mind why people pick on other people. But, you know, knowing more about it now from a psychological standpoint, it makes sense. But it's just, it sucks.
Yeah. Well, we also had different school experiences as well. Like, you were in a lot more of the gifted programs and things like that, which is also, you know, it's not uncommon for kids with ADD to, you know, be gifted, but it's also, I mean, there's a term, it's called twice exceptional. So it's, you know, up here in certain aspects and down here in other aspects simultaneously. So, you know, maybe that was just more prevalent, or maybe that was more, you know, up front with yours, where it was like, oh yeah, he's, you know, the disability is not detrimental enough that it's going to impede any of his learning or anything like that, or it's going to impede his progress. Where for me, it was, you know, I'm, you know, I'm not some kind of genius or anything. I don't have, you know, superior intellect by any means, but I was good at certain things and bad at other things. So that, by that, going back to like the social aspect of it in a school setting, you probably wouldn't have had the same experience in bullying that I did, because nobody called you stupid or another myriad of other derogatory terms.
Yep.
Just because of the exposure that you would have had to it. So, and there's plenty of kids that go undiagnosed, and there's no, I mean, on one side, they don't have to deal with the social aspect of it, but on the other side, a lot of them go undiagnosed and develop terrible learning habits, and they don't do anything with them. And they don't, like, it really cuts them short in the long run of, I guess, just life in general. Like, you practice bad habits, and they're really hard to break when you need them, like especially in college or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I tend not to lean too hard into talking about my ADHD because, you know, everything now, rightfully so, is on a spectrum. And people that are further down the spectrum on ADHD definitely have it a lot worse than me. ADD is no longer a thing, at least by DSM standards. It's just ADHD, but I never really had the hyperactivity, or at least I learned to suppress it because getting in trouble at a young age. And I think back to when I was in the gifted program, and it honestly makes me wonder why. I mean, I don't know if it was because I was divorced and I had the complex that a lot of kids who go through divorce have of having to mature too early. You know, you have to learn to, I don't want to say that you have to learn to stand on your own 2 feet, because you really don't, but you learn to mask the fact that you don't have, you know, certain stabilities that others have. And I don't want to shit on my mom and dad, because they did try really hard to give me that stability through grandparents and through, you know, creating patterns and norms and trying to create that structure. But there's, you know, when you go through divorce, there's just no way to fully remedy that. And I think it forced me to feel like I need to stand on my own 2 feet. So I need to give off this image that I'm okay. And sometimes I think that it made me seem more socially mature and I may have been to a certain extent compared to other people. But I don't know, you know, I still really struggled with math, and I really struggled in certain other subjects. And I think that those things didn't really come to light until I was in high school. And sometimes I look back, and while the gifted program was fun, it was a cool experience, I almost think that it hindered me in some ways, because it really raised the expectation. And, you know, my family already had this whole, like, you're gifted, you're going to take the most advanced courses, you need to get ready for college, all this stuff. And the standard was always way up here. And by the time I got to high school, I realized that there was a lot of stuff that I didn't know or that I needed help with. And I think that all set me up for not really knowing how to ask for help.
Yeah.
So that's one part of it. And the other part is, you know, I've noticed that ADHD really kind of almost puts you, and I think this is just a part of ADHD, is it puts you a few years behind as far as a maturity level goes. Because I found myself coming to realizations from I don't know, just seeing the world differently at like a later age than what I see some of my peers, how I see some of my peers seeing the world. And whether that is, you know, wanting to make the decision to come out to California or wanting to make the decision to, you know, do this or that, I see myself becoming interested in those things and kind of processing those things much later than my friends did. So I don't know, I guess, you know, like you said in the beginning, they didn't know a lot about ADHD then. And honestly, I don't think that they fully know a lot about ADHD now. Great counselor that I had, also an instructor, the University of Tennessee, Knoxville College of Social Work, was Steve Brown. He's a great licensed clinical social worker, but he talked in his class about how, you know, ADHD is, you know, probably more of a different way of thinking. And he always really pushed that everything is on a spectrum and everything is both and. So, you know, you really can't pinpoint any single way that an ADHD person acts, you know, just like with a lot of these other disabilities or conditions that people struggle with. So, yeah. Anyways, I had a transition earlier and we skipped over it. So now I got to get us back on track. So
what's this next topic? What do you want to talk about?
Well, let's jump on over to
ruin your transition though.
No, you didn't ruin it. We just talked through it and I forgot because I'm ADHD and things poof out of my mind. Let's talk about high school. That's where I was going to go because a lot of things changed for you in high school. You found some hobbies that really interested you. Mm-hmm. And that's, you met some people that were going to be really important in your life. I'm not going to bury the lead, so I'm going to let you take it over.
So a lot of the behavioral stuff that was carrying over into high school kind of met its end when I found theater. It was, there was always this push, I'm not some kind of giant person that everybody was like, oh yeah, you should play sports. You're, this, that, or the other, and I don't give a shit about any sport at all. I don't care. And so, that was never an interest of mine. And it seemed, even to me then, I was like, that seems like a terrible idea. Somebody's like, oh yeah, this would be a great outlet for your aggression. And I'm like, that's stupid. Like, why would let me just feed the fire. Let me go hit more things and that'll make it better. Like, I don't think fire with fire is necessarily the outlet. So maybe
what's interesting though, is you probably chose the more mature thing because sure, sports is a way for you to let out your aggression, but where is that aggression coming from? Probably your emotions. And I feel like theater is a much better channel for you to get those emotions out and kind of explore them.
Well, it's also, like I said earlier, if it wasn't me getting into physical altercations, I was also since the very beginning, a class clown. I very much so enjoy making people feel good and making people laugh. And so when I found theater and it's instead of like, Nathan, sit down, hush, it was no, stand up and do that more. It was encouraging. So I'm like, oh, why have I not been doing this the whole time? Like, there are people that want me to do this. I was just doing it because I thought it was funny. Like 3/4 of the teachers that I ever had hate me, and I'm sure have long-term scarring effects from having me as a student. And so when I get to high school and I meet Mr. Craze, who was the theater teacher, he was just like, no, everything that you're holding back on, just stop that and send it through the roof. So that was a super helpful thing. I found him as a teacher. He's very, in a time where I didn't have a lot of respect for people, he had my respect. He's a good man.
That's really special.
And then throughout theater, I met some good friends and a fiance now. So she had moved to Athens and joined theater. It's like just out of the blue, just happened. I just remember she walked through and I was just like, who is that? I'm like, oh, it's a new student. I'm like, I'm going to go talk to her forever.
You're like, yes, she is.
So yeah, I don't know. High school was very complicated for a lot of reasons, a lot of, growth and self-discovery, trying to figure out who I was, what my mentality needed to be and what it had been. And it was a bumpy road, but I had some people like Mr. Craze and my best friend Austin and Liv, who as of June 11th will be my wife. It was a difficult time, but I've got some good people out of it, and I feel like I've made the absolute most of my environment in that regard.
Well, I feel like we've got to spend some time on Austin and Liv. I'll let you give their full names, but I mean, in theater, you met both your soon-to-be wife and your best man at the wedding. So you gotta expound upon that a little bit.
So Austin, this is the best man, Austin Worthy. We met, and so I got into theater on the second semester of a school year. So I didn't meet all of the people. Prior to that class, I had been in a computer hardwaring class because the guidance counselors were like, Nathan's not going to go to college. Let's put him on a technical path because he will do that and only that. And little do they know, I'm technologically illiterate. So they're like, here's a computer. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. Oh, this is how it works. No, it doesn't. And you know, as well as anybody, that I not only don't know anything about computers, but I also have the worst luck with any technology whatsoever. It's almost
I
not
do have
fair.
to agree. It's
not fair. Shit just doesn't work, and for no reason. And you'll be like, I really don't know why this isn't working. Yeah, me either. It's bad. So I hated that class. And I was like, I don't want to do anything with computers. Me and computers are not friends. I'm going to look at something else that I can do. So that's when I found theater. I went to his class. Actually, I found his class because I was skipping my class. I skipped my computer class and was roaming the halls like a ruffian and found my way to the choir room because that room was large. And I was just like, this is weird. No other room is this big. And then I just found theaters right next door, met all these people, and was like, oh, I'm going to go here. And so then, anyway, skipping back ahead. Austin had been in theater for some time at that point, had been in theater the entire time, actually, through his high school career. He was a year older than me as well. So I get in there, and the immediate perception that Austin gives off is he is like the cool guy. Like, he is the center of it, and everybody knows it. And he is very much just like large. He's a very big personality, large and in charge type guy. And it's like my second or third week in that class. And up until that point, I had not done any acting or anything like that. My original position in theater was I was what was referred to as a worker bee. So because my dad had showed me how to use a power saw and swing a hammer like twice, he was like, you're going to build a set. And I was like, okay. And so I had been back there, but because I was a goof class clown, I had found my way to making people laugh and so on and so forth. It builds. So maybe my second or third week in that class, they have improv. So you get down in the pit, like the classroom is stair step down. And it's just in and out, whoever jumps in, whoever jumps out. And I was being very heavily pressured by Mr. Craze to get into improv. And I was like, no, thank you. I'll stand over here and make people laugh. Don't make me be in front of other people and do it. But I was led down into it pretty harshly. Like, get in there now. So I got in there, and Austin and I've been doing improv with various people here, there, and the other. It's kind of like building, ha, ha, ha. And then Austin gets in the pit with me, and he's got a very intimidating presence, just like, in general, but especially when it's like, hey, now you have to like partner with somebody. And I got to the point where I was making people laugh, and I was making him laugh. And I don't know if he felt like imposed by that or what, or maybe he saw something in me. I don't know what it was, but after that was over, Austin, after the class was over, we were packing up our bags, we were about to leave. Austin comes up to me and punches me in the balls. And I'm like, what the hell did I do? Like, he hit me in the nuts. He came up to me, put his hand on my shoulder. He goes, hey man, that was really funny in there. And then hit me in the balls and walked away. So I'm like, are we friends or are we not? Like, I don't, and I'm thinking, am I fighting this guy? And then like maybe a week later, he's like, hey man, you should come over to my house sometime. And I'm like, I thought you don't like me. You hit me in the nuts. But anyway, I was like, okay. And then I came over to his house. And then like the first day I was over at his house, we're wrestling on his trampoline. It's just like, we're friends, we're fighting. We're friends, we're fighting. Like, and it just kept being that way until
Austin uses Fight Club rules.
Yeah, really. And I don't know, until it was like back and forth until we were just like here. And then we have just stayed on a steady upward the entire time. Like absolutely 100% number one best friend. confide in him and everything. Super loyal. That's the big thing, is he is incredibly loyal and diehard, and that's something that I very much so respect in a person is loyalty and, you know, straightforward attitude, and Austin fully embodies that. And so he has been, you know, the right-hand man for me the entire time, ever since. But yeah, Liv, like I said, she came in as a new student, met her, and when I was in high school, girls liked me, but I was, regardless of that, super awkward. Like, I would be like, oh yeah, whatever. And then I would not know what to do and be like, what now? Like, so when we first met each other, like, our meeting on the same playing field was very much like, it was weird. Like, it's like, she's awkward and I'm awkward. So anytime that two awkward people are trying to engage in any kind of social interaction, it's like, so, yeah, hey, boss. So yeah, it took a little bit, but the more that I was able to talk with her and like joke with her and make her laugh and stuff like that, I was able to like overcome that shyness and that anxiety. And we've pretty much been, you know, just beating ass ever since. That's one thing, speaking of beating ass, is when I first started dating Liv.
Beat Liv's ass?
Yeah.
Austin rules, bitch.
We're friends. Liv, when I first started dating Liv, she made me promise that I couldn't fight anybody anymore. She's like, I'm not going to associate myself with someone who behaves like that and just violent outbursts. If you want me around, you're gonna have to get your shit together, basically. And I was like, okay, I'll try. Like, and it was never anything that I'd ever been like, oh, I'm never gonna fight anybody again. But when she was just like, I'm serious, that's the be all and end all of it, I was just like, okay. And so I just had to stop resolving all of my conflicts with fighting people.
So had she heard about the wrath of Nathan Cook, or had you gotten into some fights in the meantime?
A little bit of both. I don't know that she had seen me. She'd not seen me full on fight anybody. She had seen me buck up to some people, and she'd probably seen me. I know she's definitely seen me, like, around the time have violent outbursts where I would like inflict harm on myself. Like, I would like punch a lot of walls or punch myself and like a bunch of crazy shit, just being mad. So she had known about that, and she had known about me fighting other people, you know, in the past and what have you. But I don't think that she had ever seen me. Actually, I know she's never seen me full on get into a fist fight, but there were a couple of moments where it was heated.
Yeah.
But yeah, despite all of that, I'm a super sweet guy. I'm a big old teddy bear. At least I like to think of myself that way. And so, and I think that she likes to think of me that way also. And she knows that I can be that way. So she's like, stop being an ass. Like, and I'm like,
yeah,
that's fair. Good call. We'll go with that one.
Yeah.
So,
well, she's been good for you from the beginning. And you are a super sweet guy, I have to say. That.
I like to think so. I like you know, you were saying earlier, like, I feel like I'm more of a crier than a fighter, but I don't like shy away from it if the situation called for it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for my circumstances, a lot of the time I felt like my situation called for it.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, I was just thinking about the crier versus fighter thing. And I mean, it's really hard to understate the amount of frustration that I feel like you were basically just embodying and honestly swallowing, because you're a kid. You can't do anything about that at home, whether you were at your dad's house or your mom's house. And, you know, not only do you have the divorce going on, you've got the constant rocky road of going back and forth between divorced parents, but you also have this ADHD thing that's not really being handled in the best possible way. It's not being understood the best that it could be, probably by both parents. And all that is just making you mad, both at the world and yourself. So, I mean, you know, listening to your story, I was just thinking about that. And it's no wonder that you were fighting other people. And if you weren't taking out all that frustration on other people, then you're taking it out on yourself when you get mad, you know?
Right. And a lot of it was just very frustrating because I would go home and like my mom would be like, "You're so smart. Like you are incredibly intelligent. I know it. I see it. Why don't your grades reflect it?" And then I would go to school and everybody's like, "You're stupid and you won't amount to anything." And so I'm like, well, who do I believe? Like, am I smart and not reaching my potential, or am I stupid and this is the best I can do? And so there was so much like, I don't know what I'm capable of. I don't know what can I do? I don't apply myself. I certainly don't apply myself. Like I said at the very beginning, like I would have to go to the classes to even participate, to make a grade. So many times was I just like, and I would just skip class and just go do literally anything else. Actually, the primary thing that I did when I would skip class is I would go and play D&D, and that's another great outlet for me. So
there's the transition.
There it is. I figured I'd find it somewhere, and I was just like, where's that at?
It had to come up somewhere. So, you know, you completely changed my life by introducing me to D&D years later, but you got to tell your story about how you came to start playing D&D.
So going back to Austin, Austin and I, it gets into our theater background. We're role players, we're thespians, and this, that, and the other. During high school, Austin worked a couple jobs. One, he worked at Crystals. We had Crystals. And two, and the other place he worked was Blockbuster. So Blockbuster was the place to be. And while he was working at Blockbuster, he made friends with a few 30 to 40-year-old gentlemen.
As you do.
And they, after Blockbuster would close, would stay inside of Blockbuster and they would play D&D, which sounds like the greatest time ever. Like,
really
you're going to rent out movies and video games, and then when you get off work, you're going to sit there with your coworkers and friends and play D&D.
Yeah, it sounds like it jumped out of a Kevin Smith movie, honestly.
I want to jump into that Kevin Smith movie.
Right now.
Blue Skidoo, we can too. So he met a guy named Mike, was probably the first and foremost. And he introduced Austin to D&D. Austin played D&D with them when he was in high school and was like, oh, dude, this is where it's at. Because Austin's an old school, like, loves RPGs, like Morrowind and Oblivion and, you know, everything like that. And he was all about it. And so me being his best friend, we were actually over at my dad's house and we were building my shield for Renaissance Fair. We were going to a Renaissance Fair with the theater troupe, and you got to be in costume. I remember Mr. Craze is like, if you are going to go to this Renaissance Fair, you need to have a costume and you need to come up with a character name and a backstory. And we were like, what? You awesome. Give me the character. That's how this works. I don't write anything. So anyway, we were working on making characters, and I had wanted to be this warrior that was just, so I had a big wooden shield, a big round shield, and Austin and I were making it. We had got some wood from the wood pile in the theater room. We had like I was talking about, a worker bee. The worker bee section has all these tools and stuff, and so we found some good wood, and we were going to take that to Dad's and cut it and stain it and make a handle for it and straps and the whole shebang. So Austin's over at the house and we're doing that. And he goes, hey, dude, you ever heard of D&D? And I was like, no, not really. I mean, I maybe have heard the name, but I don't know what it is. And he said, okay, so this is the best way that I can describe it to you. You know how when you were a little kid and you used to go out in the yard and you would just use your imagination, you'd play whatever you wanted to, like, you know, you'd pretend you had a stick and you'd be a Jedi, or you'd be crawling around in the grass, so you'd be a soldier in World War II or something like that. I'm like, yeah. He goes, okay. You remember how much fun that was? And I was like, absolutely. Those were the best days of my life. He goes, okay. Think about those moments. Now think about doing that with all of the other kids that also did that by themselves. You put them all around the same table, and there are rules and maps, and you're playing that game together. And I was like, that sounds fantastic. And he goes, yeah, we definitely need to play it. So we had found an old second edition core rule book at the Goodwill. And we were trying to use a second edition core rule book that was basically held together by tape. And awesome. It was illegible. We couldn't do anything with it. We tried to run it. If you know anything about second edition, it's hard as shit. It's not hard as shit, but it's pretty hard compared by today's standards. So we were like, okay, well, this is the little inkling of playing this game. From that point, we go down to the local E.G. Fisher Library. We go.
Shout out Athens, Tennessee.
Oh, dude, we printed off the core rule book of D&D 3.5, 10 cents a page, the entire book.
Oh.
And we just kept that, put it in a little spiral bound notebook, used their big industrial hole punch, put it in a spiral bound notebook, and that's what our core rule book was. We played D&D relentlessly. We would go over to his house, and his dad didn't want us playing D&D at his house because he deemed it unchristian.
Mm-hmm. A regular child of the 70s, I would guess.
Absolutely. So we're playing it in his outhouse. He's like, this is not going to be in my house. And it's like, okay, it won't be in your house. It'll be in your shed.
It's funny that he was okay with that. It was a distance thing.
And he's like, 20 feet away, so help me God.
Literally.
So we were playing in the shed in all weather. Like, it'd be 105 degrees outside. And so it's like, I don't know, 253 degrees in that shed. Like, we're just melting. Or we would play in the wintertime and it would be frigid, and there was only a futon out there. So like we would sleep on the ground and on the futon, eating nothing but Doritos and Mountain Dew, like you would imagine. We would wake up. We'd play D&D until like 5 a.m. and then go to the Waffle House and play at the Waffle House table for like 2 more hours. And the waitress is just like, they're just having fun. So yeah, we played like that for a long time. We didn't have any of the books. We didn't have any of the nothing. We didn't have minis. We used M&Ms and Cheez-Its for good guys and bad guys. And when you killed one, you got to eat it.
That's awesome.
It was fantastic. So that's where the love of D&D started for me. Then we found Pathfinder, which was 3.5 revised. And at that time, 5th edition didn't exist. 4th edition had just come out, and 4th edition was a fat turd. And we didn't want anything to do with it. So we were playing 3.5 revised, which is Pathfinder.
Yeah. And so for those that don't know, D&D, saying you're playing D&D is kind of like saying you're using a Kleenex. D&D is Dungeons and Dragons, which is the primary tabletop game created by Gary Gygax. You can fill me in if I'm getting any of that wrong, but in 1970,
made by Wizards of the Coast now. Yeah, Gygax was the first.
Originally TSR, which stands for, I can't remember. Anyways, it's published by Wizards of the Coast now, and it is probably considered the primary tabletop game to play. But since the 1970s, when it was introduced, they've gone from 1st edition to 5th edition. But a lot of people really revered the 3.5 edition and considered it to be the most balanced rule set. So a different company called Paizo made a standalone game called Pathfinder, which basically takes those 3.5 rules, makes a few adjustments to make it what they consider the best balanced version. And they really have ran with that for several years, though they do have Pathfinder 2nd edition out now. But yeah. So anyways, you were playing Pathfinder.
Yes. Was playing Pathfinder. We eventually, with our minimum wage jobs, had saved up to get some of the books. We got a battle map and some wet erase markers, and we were moving up in the world. We had introduced it so much, so that like we had integrated it into the drama department. We had bled over during the seasons of musicals to the choir department. So we would play D&D with just a bunch of nerdy people. Like, you know, theater nerds are just the same as other nerds, except they dance. So I remember one time specifically, this is just a random little tidbit for you. We were playing D&D. The largest game of D&D I ever played was Austin DM'd a game for a blended group of choir and theater kids to where we were playing in a single one shot that had 26 players.
Wow. It
insane. Was ridiculous. Mind you this, within the first 2 hours of that game, he had killed all but 8 of us. That's how you weed down the group. Everybody wants to play? Okay, we're playing hardcore rules. Everybody's dead. So yeah, that was just the way that worked. But getting back to all of that, Austin graduates high school. He goes to UTK, runs out of money. UTK is,
no joke,
ridiculously expensive. And as opposed to putting himself in debt for the rest of his life, Austin elects to join the Navy. Now, Austin, being my dearest of compadres, says, "Look, man, there's a lot. We've introduced D&D to this little southern town. People are going to want to play D&D. I'm not going to be here to run it anymore. You're going to have to run D&D." And I'm like, okay, I've never read anything beyond the races and classes. I don't know what to do. And he left books with me, and it was just like a very like passing of the torch moment. He's just like, "I'm going to basic. You got to learn these books. Figure it out." So I start learning D&D and start running D&D. And with relative success. I mean, we still had lots of people that we had been playing with before. I found some new people along the way, so on and so forth. Around this time, I was around towards the end of my high school career. I was probably like a senior in high school. I was trying to get you to play D&D hard. I was like, "Dude, you would love D&D. We think the same way. You're going to like this." And you were like, "No." For years, I was just like, "You want to play D&D?" And you're like, let me think about it. And that was just the way that it worked until finally I wore you down. And then you played D&D and you loved D&D. And then I was so cleverly capable of roping you into being the DM so that I didn't have to do it anymore.
And I've been doing that for like 4 years or so. Not that long, but yeah. And I mean, I've thought a lot about why it took me so long. And I really think it was just a confidence thing. I've had a constant struggle with confidence for a long time. And I was kind of like you, standing on the sidelines in theater. I wanted to entertain people. And my favorite thing was knowing that I had made somebody laugh. But standing in the middle of the room and having the pressure on me to do that just like crippled me, and everything caved in and I couldn't do it anymore. So I remember the game that Noah DM'd for us for your birthday. We had like, I don't know, 5 or 6 people. And I was like, I said again what I had said several times, like, "I'm just going to watch. I'll just watch."
Every time.
You're like, "Nope, no, you're not. We're going to build you one right now." And everything stopped. Every other person that already had their character ready was definitely just waiting on me to get this damn thing done. And I remember I made a monk. I don't remember if that was Atticus or not, but maybe Atticus Dawnlord. I can't remember if that was him or a different.
I think his name was Zentashi.
Zentashi, really?
I think so. And I think that he had yellow eyes and he had white hair.
Damn,
because I remember you drawing a monk who had a white streak in his hair and he fought with a quarterstaff and he had different colored eyes.
Damn, I thought that was Atticus Dawnlord because I'm picturing the thing.
That character.
Anyway, yeah, so I played a monk, very stoic monk, and I remember Noah DM for you, Bryce, Liv, and I think that was it. Was anybody else there? Either way, we didn't get very much done, but it was very much a good introduction to role play because everybody role played. Bryce was playing a real swanky rogue. I think Liv was playing her child character. It was very innocent and had that. What was it? That was a big bear.
It was a bear. She played a gnome druid, and her character's name was Clementine.
Oh, so she's not. Yeah, I think I was associating her in my early D&D days as a child, but she was a gnome.
She's just a short person. Yeah.
But yeah, that was a super fun game, and I mean, it was like after that I was hooked, you know. And since then, I've come to learn that there are so many different ways to bring people into D&D, and I think everybody in my sphere knows that it's a very special thing to me. And just like you associate Austin with introducing you, I always associate you with introducing me.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, it's become a very big part of my life, and I recommend everybody do it for sure. So
it's that good stuff. I'm debating. You've inspired me to try to run it for children. And since I work at Kids Connection now, I'm debating on trying to find a way to implement it into the summer program.
Oh, yeah.
I would need to talk with everybody and see if I could like designate a time and do everything like that. But I would really like to try to introduce it on a very minimal, simplistic. I'd probably choose 5e, or I'd tweak back Pathfinder a bit. And I would try to find a way to introduce it very softly and, you know, just very not all demons and this, that, and the other. Just something very easy peasy, lemon squeezy for kids that a school would approve of.
Well,
but
that's
I think
what
it's a super great thing to do.
Yeah, and it, you know, it's so crazy that back in the 70s when Dungeons and Dragons first came about, you know, there was the what was it? Oh, the Satanic Panic back in those days, and Dungeons and Dragons was all associated with this. There's a great episode of Behind the Bastards about the Satanic Panic, different podcast, and they talk about Dungeons and Dragons and how that got roped into all this just mass hysteria that basically formed during those days. But I talk about this all the time, and I'll say it again here. There is so much to be said for like therapy and working through things through Dungeons and Dragons. And, you know, I think that if you enjoy Dungeons and Dragons, you're doing it naturally. If it's just a hobby, you know, you're working through things, you're exploring emotions. If the DM is good, they're putting you in front of situations, and you have to think about how your character would react to that, not necessarily how you would react to that. Right. And it's a real, you know, effort to separate yourself. And I think it causes you to explore a lot of things within yourself too. And that is really something special that you can do with kids. And, you know, shout out to the Napa County Office of Education, their after school ACE program, because they invited me last year as an AmeriCorps member to volunteer my time to run a game for some of the students. And it was so cool. You know, I was so nervous about it, and I was thinking, how am I going to do this? We had very limited time compared to the amount of time that you and I play in our ongoing game. So I had to figure out how to make it concise and how to pace myself, and also how to work a game that doesn't include demons and graphic death and all the dark stuff that we like to explore as adults. And that's, you know, we could talk more about it later, but yeah, I just kind of like, I created a town, and instead of improvising as much as I do in our games, I really wanted it to be a set thing, because I thought the kids would be like, what's his name? So, you know,
that's done. Quit asking questions.
I created the town. I gave every single, you know, person, and it was a very small village, and I gave every person in the village a job and a name and a backstory, and then I created conflict within that village.
Right.
And you know, as D&D always does, it did not go the way that I thought it was going to go, and that is what made it incredible and fun. And you know, I say this, I've said this several times, but there was one time in particular when I was DMing for those students, and it was the last game, and they had just gone down into the depths and found the dragon that had infiltrated and was manipulating the kobolds in the town to go around and steal all this stuff. and they had just talked to him and found out that the town had a rat, not literally a rat, but a guy who was collaborating with that dragon and was, basically trying to use that situation to take over the town and get what he wanted. Instead of killing the dragon, they decided to negotiate with this dragon. And they talked to this dragon about staying here, getting that guy out of there, and seeing if they could come to a diplomatic agreement. And I remember they had just done that, and they were walking back up, and this one kid leans back and he goes, "Guys, I don't know about you all, but I think this is awesome." And I was just like, hang on. But yeah, and I mean, and now I'm going to be able to do it again. And, shout out to Wizards of the Coast Dungeons and Dragons for supporting all the D&D clubs around the country, because they just made like the equivalent of a $600 donation to the Napa County Office of Education ACE program, where they get access to D&D Beyond, and they get access to almost all of their Dungeons and Dragon materials. So I'm in the process now of working on a second game that I'm going to be running for them, where I'm going to be playing a little bit more of 5e, which I've not done before. So
I think that 5e lends itself to being far more streamlined, and I think that it makes it a lot more concise, especially for younger players. It really minimizes all of the math and all of this stuff that you have to try to keep up with simultaneously to make it work. It kind of just mainlines things. So how old were the students that you were running that game for?
So they are a little bit older. I think that these students were from maybe 5th to 8th grade. Maybe not as old as 8th grade, but I specifically remember that there are 2 different after-school programs, and the ACE program is the older of the 2. So I think that they were a little bit older. So you would probably, yours are 3rd graders, right?
I've worked with from 8th grade to 3rd grade. So right now I'm working with 3rd and 4th grade mostly. But that's why I'm curious, because I think that it would be better if the students were older, but I know that so many of these like 4th and 5th graders are like about it right now. Like,
yeah,
because I told them that I played D&D and they thought that was the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah.
And so they were like, "I've never got to play," huh? And I'm like,
well, it can definitely
I want to change that, but yeah. I would just have to really dial it back, like to really make it like age appropriate, Yeah. But I don't know. It would take some thought and some planning and some everything else before I'm just like, can I do this? Because I don't want to. Yeah. I don't want to do anything wrong.
Well, you got to be willing to DM different, but I have to say the cool thing is learning how to DM for younger students, younger kids, actually made me learn how to make things a little bit more simplistic for like you all as adults. I definitely took some of the stuff that I learned back over, because sometimes the simpler way of doing things creates more space for creativity from the players anyways. So, and I think that it is important with younger kids to be able to have a lot more prep work done. That way, when they do go off the rails, you're more prepared for that. And I was doing a lot more improv before I did that game with you all than I do now. And it definitely taught me a lot about prepping efficiently and not taking too long on it, but having the things ready that need to be ready for the game. So anyways, I say all that to say you should definitely do it. I think that I've
been really considering it. I would just have to figure out the best way to approach it.
Very much feels like you're passing the torch again when you're doing that. And, I hate that it took me until I was 20, 21 years old, maybe even older than that, to start playing. So I love introducing it to the younger folk.
Yeah. That's good stuff. I think I was maybe 15 when I first played. And it was like, it just blew my mind. Like I was like, oh, I get to do anything. Like And it wasn't like, I can't wait to get away with something that I can't normally get away with. Though I've read a bunch of studies, and a lot of studies, there's a lot of kids that are just like, let's just get away with stuff that we can't normally get away with, that's why that has my concern with younger kids. I'm like, we're going to have to figure that out. But for me, it was like, if I want to be like this super huge, strong dude, and I'm not a super huge, strong dude, that makes me feel like I'm getting to live like a different experience through this character.
Yeah.
So especially with me being like, with the instances that I had with others when I was younger about being called stupid and called this and that and the other because of my disability or whatever, like by being able to play a character that is entirely different from that and be just like, oh, he's a wizard. He is easily the most intelligent person that is anywhere in the next 2 continents. Mm-hmm. It's just like, I don't know. It just feels like you're like, yes, I am. Like, I don't know. It just gives you a level of confidence that you're just like, So,
yeah. And different people are going to do different things with that confidence. Yeah. You know, when you're living vicariously through this character, are you living vicariously as what you consider to be someone more intelligent and more strong than you? And if so, what are you going to do with that? You know,
right. I mean, you become a bully or you.
Exactly.
Right.
And I think that goes back to the therapeutic side of it. And in a lot of ways, as the dungeon master, especially with kids, you are almost like a therapist because you have to set up the rails, but you know, you can choose to set up the rails and say, no, you're not doing that. Right. Or you can choose to set up the rails and teach them that even in this fictional world, actions have consequences. Mm-hmm. And the best way I found to do it was you create that buffer where actions have consequences, and that kind of bounces them back from doing this crazy stuff. But then if they still persist on just going off the rails, then further back from that is the hard line where you say, okay, Nathan, I think for the enjoyment of everyone else, I'm not going to be able to let you do that because and that's the thing, is it's still a learning experience because it's not you and me playing, it's a group. And if they get too off the rails, it becomes a learning experience of this game is not about you. This game is about the group. And now these things that you're doing are affecting this group's ability to enjoy the game. So,
right. Yeah. And I think that echoes the already well-established idea of a session 0.
Oh yeah.
Like you can't do it without a session 0. I don't feel like, I mean, I can think to the times where I was DMing and I'm like, all right, we're going to do a campaign, but I don't know any of your characters and there's no session 0. Okay, here we go. Like when I was in high school and was just eager to play. But now I'm like, a session 0 is so vital. And especially if you're going to look at it from a standpoint of how do I implement this into a school setting or working with kids or whatever like that. Like I think using a session 0 the same way that you would do a lot of like other lessons and things in school, like setting up, it's almost like a study guide, or it's almost like something that you're like, okay, this is the base level. This is what we're building off of. Nobody knows beyond this, but this is the core information. Now we're going to work together. It's kind of like that we do, you do kind of classroom setup. So you do it together and then you do it. So.
Yep. And it's also important in that session 0 to set your boundaries early. You know, I mean, and I wanted to make it tangible and real for the students. So I made a rule set and a list, and it wasn't a rule set. It was like house rules. You know, you're not not going to try to kill each other. There's no PvP. In this case, there's no cursing. You know, you can't make an evil character, like just those basic things so that even if that comes up, it's like, well, remember, we've got these rules in place and that's not how we're doing this game, so that it doesn't become you didn't tell me I can't do that, so why can't I do that? It's like, no, I did. Everybody agreed on these rules, and, you know, we're going to have to move past this so that we don't take up time here because this is the game we're playing. So, anyways, a fun little lesson for the audience on Dungeons and Dragons and doing it with 3rd to 8th graders. But let's get back on track. So Dungeons and Dragons, obviously a huge part of your life. Theater got you into it. probably really changed your high school experience, because I remember that was, if you weren't doing that, you were probably playing video games or wrestling on the trampoline. But besides those two things, that's what you were doing. You met Austin Worthy, your best man. You met Liv, your soon-to-be wife, and you graduated, went to Cleveland State, and that didn't work out.
Oof, it did not work out.
So what made you want to get back into school now, and where are you going and what are you going for? Walk me through that.
So after Cleveland State and the catastrophe that will not even call it an attempt was, I was essentially given an ultimatum by my mom at the time. And she was like, hey, you're going to either go into the workforce or you're going to have to join the military or do something. And she really didn't want me to join the military. That part was being presented more by my stepdad, Kevin, who was in the Navy for like 12 years and thinks it's the greatest thing that there ever was. And for some people, sure, like the military can be a very formative experience and teach you a lot of things. And I definitely see the value in that. However, I don't see myself being successful in that way. I think that the way that I process information, the way that my mind works is far too creative. Like I strive in a more open setting where I'm allowed to come up with creative solutions to things, as opposed to the very rigid structure of what a military life would look like. And like around the time Austin was, going to the Navy or he was joining the Navy, and there was a lot of talk around the time that I was going to join with him, and that it was me and him were just going to go be Navy boys on a boat and be sad together. But Liv, I did it mostly for Liv. Like I didn't think, I was like, man, I really don't think military is going to be good for me. But I was also like, my other option is enter the manufacturing field and get a job at a factory. And that is worse almost to me somehow. Because at least with being in the military, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to hate it, but at least I'll be like, I'm doing something for a good cause. Like I don't necessarily always have to agree with the stance of what the military is doing or whatever, all that. But I was like, at least I can be like, I can find my own moral, like high ground in it. I can be like, no, I can. Yes. But I was like, I don't want to leave Liv, and I value her too much to not go into a huge spill of detail, but Liv's dad was in the military, and that was not a great experience for her. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to do that to her. Yeah. I was like, she's not going to come out of a shitty experience just to be re-entering another shitty experience. That's not fair to her, and I'm not going to do that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go work at a factory. And I started at Denso. And if you've never known what depression was, go work a job where you don't see the sun. I would go into work, and it would be dark outside. And I would get off work, and it would be dark outside. I would work in plant 801, and there's a kiln, which is a big oven, basically. And I was given about a 10.5-foot long pike pole, and I was oftentimes told to scrape crystal fragments off of the ceiling and walls of a kiln for 12 to 13 hours at a time.
Jesus.
So if I wasn't doing that, I would be in the powder room, which is a big 3-story box where powder that once combined with water and pushed through a press is then run through a kiln to make catalytic converters. That was terrible. It reacts with water. You're shoveling it with a big shovel. And so if it gets on you, you sweat. Now that is clay, and it's just all over you, and it was terrible. And I feel like I got sick. I don't know that I can't fully blame it on that. But in my head, I'm like, nah, I got sick because of Denso. So I was easily in my lowest place at that point. I was like, I hate it. I was like, I need to amount to more than this. I am more than, I can't find fulfillment in this. I don't know what it is that I'm meant to do, but it's not this. I know that. And around that time, I was, I hadn't really done much growing mentally up until that point. I was very much so just a, I don't know, whatever kind of guy.
Just kind of coasting, trying to figure it out. I mean, that's what most people are doing at that age, whether they're actually doing that or not.
So I was like, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to leave here and I'm going to go to the police academy and I'm going to be a cop because that is an admirable job. And I think that this is a job that I will feel fulfilled. I feel like I'm helping people. And that's ultimately what it goes back to the whole make people feel good thing. Like, I want to do a job where I feel like I'm contributing to someone else. And if I'm not doing that, then I feel like shit, basically. Yeah. So I was like, I'm going to be a cop because also my stepdad, as I said, he was in the Navy. And then after the Navy, he was a state trooper. He still is a state trooper. And I looked at him and I was like, you know, I might not always agree with that guy, but that guy's a good guy. He's a good man. And I think that in his heart, he's a very good person. And I would like to emulate that. And so I think that I'll go and be a cop. And around that time, Donald Trump was running for president. And a lot of the Black Lives Matter stuff was really taking form. And it caused me it really put me in a position where I had to think about things that I never thought about as a white dude from Tennessee. And I'm like,
same.
I don't know that I want to. I mean, let's see, what was that, 2016 probably? So I graduated 2014. So yeah, I was like 19. And I was blown away. I was just like, now I can't. The thing that I was like, oh yeah, I'll go do that, is now being presented to me in a way, or at least I'm taking it, not presented to me in a way. That sounds like it's being changed. I am now aware of a situation that I was not aware of until this. And I was like, the thing that I was thinking that I was going to go do about being a cop and doing all this, I'll be able to, serve and protect is shitty. Like I'm like, I can't abide by that. I can't associate myself with that. I can't willingly join something like that. Yeah. Because I don't agree with it. Now I don't know. I just couldn't. As simple as I can put it, I guess. I just was like,
was it there was a lot of attention brought to the flaws in the system and the fact that, you heard me talk about this on Scott's podcast, right. There was a lot of attention brought to the need for police reform. And of course, a lot of that got manipulated into something completely different and turned into a culture war like everything does. But right. Was it more of that made you say, I don't want to be a part of that system? I'm sure you knew that you could be a good, committed cop that was not a racist or a homophobe or a misogynist or whatever.
Right.
But was it more of the seeing the light shown on that system?
I think so. Yeah. It was, I felt like I would be restricted again in a way that the military would also have restricted me, and I wouldn't be able to make my own decisions on something, and I would be taking orders in a way that would jeopardize others. And to me, what being a cop was going to be about in my 19-year-old head was, all right, I'm going to be a cop and I'm going to be somebody that helps the community and protects others and puts himself in between people in danger. And I was like, there's something admirable to that, or admirable about that. And I think that that's something that I could do. I think that I have the heart for it. Everything else is secondary. I can learn how to do other things, but if in my heart, if I think I can do the right thing, then that's what I should do. But the more that was being exposed, the more that it was developing and things like that, I really became aware of a lot of the, I don't know, I guess just negativity that had always been there that I just never looked at through a different set of eyes. And I just couldn't, I didn't think that it would be something, I couldn't put my name on it and think I'm doing the right thing by doing this, because I felt like I would be asked to do something that I wouldn't agree with. And I didn't want to do that. So instead, I also around this time, I talked about it, Denso, I got sick. So I was about to go to the police academy, and I got my papers and done all that. And I'd gone and had my background check, did all the FBI, yada, yada, all that stuff. I was having second thoughts at that time. And while I was preparing for the academy, about, the physical side of the academy, I was going to have to be doing a lot of running and a lot more physical stuff. So I was working out a lot more and just trying to prepare, basically. And I got sick, and I didn't know what was happening, but I started having really bad stomach pains and things like that. And I went to the doctor, and they did an ultrasound on my stomach, and they were like, your gallbladder's gone. We gotta do surgery, like, when's today? 2 days from now. So yeah, I had to go and get my gallbladder taken out, and that kind of put a pause on the whole academy thing. So I while laying around and not being able to stand up or do anything really, I was really given the opportunity to think. And I'm like, I was having second thoughts. I definitely am clear that I don't want to do this now. It's almost like this was a sign for me to just take a second. If I wasn't going to give myself a second, the second was going to be given to me. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to look at this through different lens and really make my mind clear on it.
Kind of like Wes's shoe. It was going to happen whether you wanted to or not.
Fate was like, hey, sit down, think about it. And I'm like, I'll think about it later. It's like, think about it. So yeah, that happened. And then after I had recovered from surgery and all of that, things are great. I needed to find another job, since I had already decided that I was going to go to the academy and didn't have anything lined up from that point. So I was looking around, and I saw that Valvoline, the quick lube place, was hiring, and they did not require any prior training or knowledge. And I was like, perfect, because I don't have any. I didn't know anything about a car. I didn't know anything about anything. And I was like, you know what? And this is in my head. I'm like, you know what? A man should know something about his own vehicle, shouldn't he? By God, I'm going to learn what a dipstick is. And so I'm like, I'm going to go work at Valvoline. So I worked at Valvoline, and I learned a little bit about cars, just enough to put me on what I would consider like civilian level knowledge of vehicles. And
you'd be surprised. But
yeah, around that time, I was trying to figure out, because I was like, I was debating with the idea of, do I want to be a mechanic? Should I be a mechanic? Is this what I need to be for the rest of my life? Whatever. Again, I felt the same thing that I felt when I was at Denso about, I don't feel fulfilled by doing this. Like, is it something I could do? Yes. Is it something that I could make decent money at? Yes. But is money what I value? No. Like, I value my happiness above everything else. So I need to figure out what I can do to make that work. So going back to the whole, I want to help people idea, I got involved with the local volunteer fire department. And I said, I'm going to go through their volunteer fire department. I'm going to go through both of their training courses, and I'm going to become a fireman, because I think that a fireman is it's in the same vein of a police officer, about helping the community and doing this, that, and the other, whatever. But firemen don't do bad things at all. Like, I was just like, they're just put out fires. Like, how could they be bad? I'm going to try to find something that I can do to help the community where I'm not being a bad person. I'm hell-bent determined to find that. So I go through fireman training, and I get in there, and it starts out, and I'm like, oh yeah, I got this. I'm going to do this for sure. Well, turns out firemen can also be bad, because I got in there with some people that were training me and that I was training with. And they had differing beliefs than I did morally on a lot of things. They were very misogynistic, very homophobic, very racist. And I think that it just comes with the culture. It might not be the culture everywhere, but it's definitely the culture here.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. And
I didn't want to, again, associate with somebody that I felt so poorly about. Like, I'm supposed to be able to trust these people with my life. If I'm going to throw on my gear and I'm going to go into a building and do all this, I need to be able to trust these people, like, in total transparency. And I felt like a lot of the things and a lot of the jokes and stuff that I was hearing there, the way that they would talk about other groups of people, it just really put a bad taste in my mouth. I didn't think, I was like, if you think that about somebody else, I can't associate with you. I can't trust you. I don't feel like you're a good person.
Well, and the thing is, not necessarily with the misogynistic or the racist or even homophobic stuff where they singling you out, but that's not the way you feel.
Right. And
the fact that you don't feel that way means that they also probably don't like you, Yeah. And I kind of said that in a convoluted way. It essentially causes you to put a filter on yourself. Because you can't talk about your political views. You can't talk about your friends that you have that fall into those categories that they're putting down and shit talking about. You can't be open about your, feelings as a feminist or whatever, because you're going to be, looked down upon by them and made fun of by them. And how in the world are you supposed to work in a position like that where you're supposed to trust these people to have your back, just like you say.
So yeah. I left that essentially feeling hopeless, feeling like I don't know what I'm going to do. I've been working at Valvoline, and I've been making okay money. Not great, but I was doing okay.
You're still working there at this time too, right?
Correct. Yes, I was working there. I was doing both. I was training by night and going on calls and doing all that. And then I was by day changing oil and tires and hating my life.
The dream. Oh.
Yep. So I wasn't happy there, but I knew, I was like, okay, until I figure it out, I got to keep making money. I just got to make money. And Walmart's Tire Lube Express was paying more money than Valvoline. And I was like, well, it's the same job. Let's just go work there. Oh, so.
And you had double experience because we worked together at Kmart before all this.
Oh, yeah.
Shout out to Athens Kmart. Shout out to David Johnson, the real MVP.
Sorry.
But then, of course, you had Valvoline. So you got a full-blown resume for that position.
Oh, yeah. They were like, start today. So I went there, and I worked there for a good bit. I worked in the TLE area, Tire Lube Express, doing all their vehicle maintenance and all that. I felt as though I was working alongside some pretty shitty people. I was trying to find a better term. They're just shitty. I was working alongside pretty shitty people. And I was like, okay, they pay comparably enough to work in the stock room that I could maybe work with people that are not these people. So I moved from TLE to the stock room and was making about the same money. So I was like, okay, I'll just do this until I figure something out. And I worked at Walmart in the stock room and in various positions for a good period of time. I don't know how long it was exactly. 2 or 3 years, maybe. I think that sounds right.
Mm-hmm.
While there, boy, did I truly discover who I was as a person. I didn't think that I would. I was very, like I said, when I started Denso, I kind of began to think more inwardly about what are my beliefs, like as an individual, what do I think? And, you know, the politics of the time and all of that stuff that kind of played into it. But as time had progressed, I had started at Denso, and until I got to Walmart, I was kind of on this journey. While I was at Walmart, I really felt as though I've really figured it out, because I got to Walmart, and at this point it had been several years since I graduated, and I was working in the Walmart of the same town that I'd grown up in. And I ultimately got really down on myself because of that. I felt like I was not amounting to anything, and I felt like all of the things that people had said about me being stupid and not being able to accomplish anything were really coming to fruition. And I was just like, wow, I really do suck. But I came to the realization that is a perception, and that is my ego. My ego that says that I am too good for this or not good enough for that or anything like that is all preconceived notions that I've created for myself based on my environment, based on, you know, past resolutions, anything. And I just decided that this is all just in my head. All of this is made up. None of this is real. This is a job like anything else. All of this shit that you've been going through, this, that, and the other, is just, it doesn't matter. Like, let go of all of that hate and all of that frustration and all of those like mental blocks that I'd put on myself to like what I needed to be, what I needed to act like or sound like, what others needed to perceive me as, anything like that. While I was at Walmart, I felt a very humbling experience, and it all kind of washed away. At Walmart, while I was working at Walmart, I had really grown spiritually. I had been meditating like crazy, like super long periods of time, like every day. Like I was Zen as shit, which is a long pathway from where I started, like fighting people in hallways and everything else, being violent and angry all the time, to being like in a dirty stock room and just like in total tranquility with myself.
Yeah.
Like I really just, I don't know. Walmart was a very transformative experience, and I never thought that it would be. I was like, because I started there, I'm like, I'm going to work here until I figure it out. And by God, did I figure it out. Like it wasn't, I didn't think it would be the way that it was, but I truly left, when I started working there to the time that I left working there, I was a very different person. And
what do you think it was that gave you that space? Because, you know, anybody that listened to me on Scott's podcast probably hears the similarity of, it took me getting a master's degree, which is a much more expensive endeavor. You know, you may say, oh, well, you got a master's degree. Well, yeah, I also spent $42,000 to find my inner self and become my own person, which, you know, it's arguable whether or not that was the best path to take. But, you know, you are describing working at Walmart the same way that I think about getting that degree in social work. And it's something about the education that I got, what I learned is a better way to say it, and the space and the permission it gave me to kind of unlock myself. It seems like you found that there at Walmart.
I think it was just isolation. I mean, I worked alongside people, but I got left alone a lot. Like, it's very much so like when you're working second shift, it's just kind of like, go do whatever. Mm-hmm. Like you have a job, get it done, and then go home. But so much of my days were spent totally by myself, where I wouldn't talk, and I would just be left to think for hours at a time. And I was like, I really found out what I valued and what I don't. Like what things are important to me and what things aren't. Everything that's not important to me, I need to let go of. And so I would do that through just long periods of isolation. And then I would go home and I would get off work at like 11:30 or 12. And so then by the time that I'm getting off work, essentially all of town is shut down, right? Like everybody's asleep, everybody, you know, whatever. So I would go home and just be by myself again. But this time I would be home by myself at nighttime. And so I would meditate a lot, or I would read. And I really took that opportunity to educate myself on just anything that interests me. Like there's articles, there's books, there's anything. I would, if I thought of something, Amazon Prime, that book is coming here, I'll read it tomorrow. Like, and so I would just take in all this information and I don't know, I just, being left alone and being able to take in the information that I valued, just kind of left me at a spot where I was just like, oh yeah, this is it. It just, things became very clear to me.
So what did that meditation is becoming much more mainstream, but I think it's also still very threatening to people, and you know, honestly, to a lot of people where we come from, still very demasculating. Oh, yeah. It has that stereotype. So what did meditating like that do for you? Because you was obviously very committed to it.
Well, I still meditate regularly, but I don't meditate at the rate that I was doing before, primarily due to my schedule. I have so much schoolwork that I don't get to meditate for 8 hours a day the way that I was trying to before. So there are a lot of different, from everything that I'd read and everything that, you know, there are lots of different techniques to meditation, and there's a lot of different goals to meditation. Sometimes you're seeking something, you know, this, that, you know, there's a lot of different application to it. Yeah. And there's a lot of different schools of thought that approach to it. What I did that got me to the place that I was at is I would meditate on nothing. It was more of a, I guess, almost like a more Buddhist approach about trying to get rid of everything. Just, I'm trying to clear this, just make everything go away. Because then once everything's clear, it's almost like trying to clean a room and it's just cluttered and piled, and you can't organize everything if it's in a pile. But if you spread out the room and categorize it and then put it up the way that it's supposed to go, you can put it up way easier once it's categorized. And for me and my ADD brain, it's just too busy. It's too much noise. So meditation really got me to that level space that I needed to get everything put away and in its right cubby and labeled and laminated, and air freshener was sprayed. Like, I don't know. I needed just time to be quiet and to be alone and to really get introspective. It wasn't like I was necessarily seeking enlightenment or anything. Yeah. But in a way, it kind of inadvertently got me to a point of clarity that I think people are seeking, and I got there without intending to. By no means am I proclaiming enlightenment. That would be foolish. But I do think that I'm far more together because of what I did.
Yeah. But I mean, I think honestly, having the same disorganized, kind of constantly in rotation ADD, ADHD mind, it almost is a point of enlightenment when you can find some kind of method that helps you to organize that and to clear that and really just allow you to form a clear and direct pathway to whatever it is that you're trying to do. And I really value the discipline that it takes with that, because I also like to meditate and I've tried to meditate, but I have not yet got to the point where I can stick with it and let it clear my mind. Because for me, the act of meditating, I'm not disciplined enough to commit to it, I guess. It's like, I guess I still have trouble clearing my mind. I sit down to meditate and it still feels like a chore rather than a release. And I've not got to that point yet, but I have noticed you have become a very disciplined person. And I imagine that what you found through meditation probably guided you to that as well.
Yes. I I got very organized, I guess is the simplest way that I can put it. By doing meditation the way that I was doing it for as long as I was doing it. And the way that you talk about how it feels like a chore, it absolutely starts that way. 10,000%. I've never met anybody who has ever meditated for long, like periods of time, spanning months or years or whatever, that started out and was like, oh yeah, I just started doing it and felt great. Like it's a slow climb, and it's the first several times is just like, okay. But I think the reason that I got there was because of the schedule that I was on, and there was nothing else for me. It's almost like, I don't want to like antiquate it to prison because I've never been to prison, but I assume the same level of isolation that you get from being in a cell by yourself is the same thing as me being in a place where everybody's asleep and it's dark. Mm-hmm. Like I can't talk to anybody. Like Austin, my best friend, he's on deployment doing whatever overseas. All of my other friends are asleep, or the people that I work with are playing video games. And at the time of all of this, I approached the whole situation with the mindset of what is important to me. And up until that period of time, video games are very important to me. Like I tried to play games competitively, and I was like, I'm gonna do this. This is gonna be my thing. And I got to the point where I was like, this shit doesn't matter. I can enjoy it, and I can enjoy it recreationally, but I need to learn how to do everything that I do in moderation and not in excess, which was something that was very difficult for me up until that point.
Yeah.
So like as of now, I have it up in front of me. I have, what's today's date? It has been 821 consecutive days where I have only had water to drink. And it has been 733 consecutive days of being a vegetarian. And I think that I'm not like, everybody should be a vegetarian. Like I think that it helped me, for one, lose weight. Because when I was very depressed, I just ate a lot, and I ate a lot of shitty food. Like when you work at Denso and there's a Burger King right there, you're going to go to Burger King. Yeah. So to like kind of cleanse that out of me. And I was also very concerned for my health because like diabetes is a thing in my family. I think it's probably a thing in everybody's family if you're from the South, because it's the South. And so I was like, I don't want to do that. And where's all the sugar coming from? It's probably all the tea that I drink. I should stop drinking tea. And so it started out also, let me get on that. I was drinking so much milk at the time, and I don't know why. I was just like,
milk guy.
I just like it. I would be drinking an entire gallon of milk in 2 days. I would drink that's a half gallon a day, Grayson. That's too much milk.
It's a lot of milk.
That's a whole lot of milk. Too much. A whole lot of bullshit. So, and it's expensive. Like, so I was just wasting money. Again, going back to that mindset of, is this important? It's not. I'm going to get it out of here. So I stopped drinking milk, and then I was like, oh, well, if I'm not drinking milk, I should stop drinking Coke. Okay, so now I'm only drinking tea and water. There's so much sugar in tea. I should just drink water. And then that's all I did. So I kind of stair-stepped my way down. And vegetarianism also, like I just was like, I'm eating so much fried just meat, because also like I hated vegetables. It's like, why? Have you tried them? No. Why haven't you tried them? Well, because you have meat and potatoes, and that's it. Like, I understand that potatoes are a vegetable, I understand, but it's not a real vegetable. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just starch.
It's fake vegetable.
Yeah, it's like, that's what you tell people if you're like, I eat vegetables, what? Potato? Yeah, get the fuck out of here. Like, just shut up. So, I just tried to scale all that back. So it was almost like a mind, body, spirit thing. Like I was able to clear my mind. I was able to change my diet and really get I got weight off, and I felt better. Like, and that's a thing. Like I've never been like a fat guy, but I've never been like a fit guy either, you know? And when I felt like I lost weight, I was like, oh my God, I have so much energy. have I just been walking around like this for years?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because when you lose that weight, you're like, holy shit. Like, I'm never tired. I'm never going to sleep. It's fantastic. So I did that. And so that was like getting my mind clear, getting my body clear. And like the spirit just kind of came along with it. Like I was like, oh, I'm just in total tranquility now. Like, how do I not just feel totally fulfilled? How do I not feel like I'm totally at one? Like, I just felt like, whew, it was like, it's almost bizarre. Like, I don't know how to antiquate it to anything other than it almost felt supernatural, where I'm just like, whoa, I feel so like, it was such a polarizing feeling from the way that I had lived up until that era that I was like, it felt like night and day. That's why I say that it feels like that. It feels so just different.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I was able to get my shit together.
Well, I mean, I think that like self-care is an enlightening experience. Like when you really, first of all, when you listen to yourself, because I think that that's really what you were doing, you know, with meditation, is you were listening to yourself. And as you start to listen to yourself and ask yourself that question, what is necessary and what's not, that's really taking into consideration how to balance your body and your mind. And when you do start doing that self-care and you get to that point where you really feel like you're making progress, it's like it's something you've never experienced before. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really difficult for someone with ADHD because you constantly have so much stuff buzzing around you. But once you get to that point, it really is an enlightening experience. Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunately, it's very, very hard. I'll speak for myself here. Doing things that make me feel like I'm taking care of myself are hard because a lot of the times they conflict with other things that I want to be doing or that people want me to be doing.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and that's nobody's fault, but it is very hard to stay committed to your own self-development and your own self-care. You know, from, you know, getting up in the morning on time and taking some time before you have to get ready and things, to go into the gym after work every day, whatever it is, there's constantly things popping up in your life and constantly other things or other people pulling you in different directions. Mm-hmm. And I think there's something to be said to getting to a certain level of confidence in your own self-care that you can be flexible and know that you can pull yourself back. But it is very difficult to stay committed to like go into the gym on a schedule for myself when I'm getting pulled in this direction to talk on the phone, this direction to play video games, this direction to do that, because all these people are wanting you to do things that you also value and enjoy. So it's a journey, but I think that if you commit to it, it really does change you as a person. And I'll go back to what you said, you know, it kind of changes your perception and it unlocks this trapped feeling. And that's what it did for me, talking about going through, you know, social work and going up to Knoxville and stuff. And you're talking about this completely unique from my situation, personal journey that you went through while working at Walmart. Both of those things for us unlocked something and changed our perception. And when you change that perception and stop looking at life like a bunch of expectations that you have to meet, and you realize that, I think you even said this at one point, none of it really matters. You know, there's only two things you have to do, live and die. And you don't get to control when you do either one of those things. And the way you choose to do things in between, regardless of your age, race, sex, whatever, is completely up to you. And it's so easy to get caught, especially in the South, where tradition and tribalism is so overwhelming. It's so easy to get caught up in all the expectations that have been laid out for you since birth. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the more you hold yourself to those expectations and the less you meet those expectations, the more you start to feel like a failure. Mm-hmm. And even with the stuff that I had done, bachelor's degree, master's degree, working a full-time job, renting a house, I felt like I was not meeting my own goals because I had been meeting the expectations, but none of them were mine throughout that whole period of my life. And, you could call it selfish and privileged. And I was privileged to be able to do the things that I do now and live in California. But it was not until I decided to do these things for myself, come out here, do this, pursue these dreams and these goals, that I actually felt like I was living my own life and not just trying to live my life to meet someone else's goal that I thought that they had for me. So, yeah, little rant there for you.
Yeah, there was even a time where I was like at the height of it, and I was just like, I'm moving to India. I don't care. I'm gonna go be a monk. Like I was like, I'm doing it. But I mean, there has to be a balance in all things also. I think that and that's what's kind of got me where I'm at now is like you can go fully into that whole like Zen state and be like, I'm totally nothingness, right? But also, I don't necessarily adhere to I definitely don't adhere to like a Buddhist philosophy because life is suffering. That's mantra of Buddhism is life is suffering and let go of everything. Yes, let go of the shit that is not serving you and is not important to you, but also I don't think that you can let go of everything entirely because then you're denying yourself humanity. And I think that that's where the divide is between like a spiritualism and living. Like, I mean, and we have a different perspective of it because we live in a Western society, but to me, there are things that I still value that if I wanted to go into like a strictly like just monastic life that I would deny myself. And those things I value too much. Like, I very much so want to have a family. I very much so want to help people. And by going and living, in a very monastic way or something like that, that to me almost is more selfish about I'm going to, just because I want to do it. And I mean, I guess to an extent it is your life and you do what you want to do. But for me, I value love and family more so than I value my own personal pursuit of whatever. I'm at a point now where I feel sustained and I feel secure in myself. I feel sharp in my mind, and I don't feel like I need to pursue anything to the point of, extremism to gain anything that I don't already have. I feel like I have everything I need. And that's before that I wasn't. I was definitely struggling. But I feel like I'm at a point now where I'm good.
Yeah.
Do I wish I could meditate more? Absolutely. I'd hate how busy I am. And I miss the nothingness at times that working at Walmart was, because I could just do whatever and it didn't matter. But that time will come again. I will get through all of this school and all of this wedding and all of this it's here now, but it will be back there. And once that is the way that it is, I'll have more time and clarity to be. And that's what I value, is just the ability to be. I need to feel like I'm helping people. I need to be a good husband and one day a father. And that's what I value. That's it. And just to be able to be at peace with myself, we're good. So from Walmart, I said, okay, thank you, Walmart. You got me. I got to go and do further than that. And so it was at this time that Liv had graduated college. She has got her bachelor's degree in special education. And I was talking to her and I'm like, I want to do something. I know I don't want to be here. I know that's not where I stop. Like I've got to reach the point that I'm trying to get to. I've been trying to get to it this whole time. And by the way, she had been with me this entire time and has been the most supportive person throughout all of it. Just to be able to be like, you're good. Figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, I have to jump in to say there's a lot to be said. There's really a lot to be said for any relationship that goes on as long as you all have, without getting married. Not to say that, you know what I mean, but
I understand.
You all have been through so much change with each other and been there for each other and been flexible. And I think a lot of people would admire that for sure.
Right. Because we're going on 8 years now, and we're going to get married in June. So it's been a while, especially to be as young as we are. We've gone through our fair share of growth and development that most couples, and I'm not trying to be like, ooh, we're better than everybody. Like, I just think that a lot of people that have started in the situation that we both started in have taken very divergent paths than the one that we're on. And ours happens to be one where we were still together and very strong.
Exactly. Yeah. And both are valid. You got to know when to walk away, and you got to know when you can grow together. And it's worked out for you all that you've been able to grow together.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, she goes, why don't you go to school? And I'm like, because I'm a shitty student. Like, you understand that I narrowly passed high school and bombed my way through my 2 semesters at Cleveland State. And she's like, the old Nathan did. Like, yeah, you struggled then, but that was a different you. Like, she has seen more growth than me, and she was super supportive and super just dedicated in trying to convince me to reach, because I was like, I don't know what I need to do, but I need to do something. And she's like, do something that you're scared of. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I'm scared of that though. So she was just like, no, you got it. And so she helped me get enrolled, and now I'm in school. I'm currently, my major is secondary education, with a focus in history, because out of all of the subjects that I ever took, I always liked history. It kind of goes back to theater in a way, because to me, history, not only is it very important, but it's, to me, it's just a story. It's just a different long story that can be broken up into different chapters and told, and lessons can be learned from those stories. And that's what is interesting to me about history. And that's what I think is so valuable about history. And that's probably the reason that I was able to retain it as well as I was when I was younger, is I just took it in as a story, like a play, like anything, like a book. It's just something that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that's that chapter, and that's that chapter. And it's just stories. And I think that that's what drew me to it. And so, yeah, I'm doing secondary education history. I've been toying with the idea of going elementary education instead. I don't know. The reason I say elementary education is because I've been working with a lot of elementary school students with Kids Connection, and I like them more than I originally thought I was going to. Because I was like, no, I'm going to deal with older kids. But then I've met some third graders, and I'm like, I don't know. Y'all are pretty great. But I don't know. I don't have all the exposure. I'm only a freshman right now. And I'm on my 2nd semester. So there's time for me to figure out what I want to do. I'm pretty interested in religion as well. I might minor in it. We'll see. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now. Still growing and learning. Yeah.
And I mean, you're doing such a good job right now of getting all these experiences. And my best advice in the things that I'm doing would be, take advantage of every opportunity that you can. I'm pretty awkward, and as much as I like to talk to people and entertain, I also can be pretty introverted. Those things kind of exhaust me, and I need to go in on myself. Mm-hmm. And that mentality causes me to avoid opportunities to get out and do things sometimes, because I would rather just be in with myself. But doing this AmeriCorps thing and taking every opportunity I can to volunteer and to go meet new people, regardless of how I meet them, whether it's online or in person, has just given me so much more life experience, arguably, than I have had in my entire life living in only Athens, Tennessee. And every experience like that is valuable. because every experience like that teaches you more about yourself and what you do like and what you don't like. And from, running D&D for after school programs to working at an animal shelter, I learn more and more every day about what I want to do with my life. And it, like we said earlier, it's such a good feeling to know that life is ongoing and doesn't start and end at any particular time that anyone else sets for you. It is, everything is your life, but what you want to do as far as your career, you're always learning what that's going to be. And there really is no time limit on it. Mm-hmm. So, I feel like we should touch on your spiritual journey, because religion was a big part of both of our lives, but I think that it was even more implemented into your life as a young adult, as a young kid than it was mine. So what has that journey been like for you, and where do you consider yourself to be now, regardless of what that definition is?
That is a very difficult question to answer. As far as the latter part of the question, beginning my life, I come from a very conservative, very Southern Baptist background. My papa on my dad's side is a very hellfire and brimstone pastor. Like the dude who's slamming the fist on the pulpit, and the jacket's coming off like midway through, and it's that kind of church. We don't need more than one of these. A squeegee out there.
I got a box or.
So yeah, that was the upbringing there. My dad was also a pastor at one point. Then went to he focused more on youth ministry. My grandfather on my mom's side was a deacon for years. And my mom has played piano in every church that I've ever been to since I was alive. So church is very integrated into my core values and upbringing just as a whole. They have evolved over time through self-discovery and analyzing things. So like I said, they started out Baptist. I don't consider myself a Baptist now. My personal beliefs do not necessarily align. When my dad married your mom, he went from being a Baptist to a Methodist. And while I'll always find a way to say something negative about a Baptist church, I will say that I still consider myself a Christian. I'm a religious person. My meditations and everything like that, and I'll go off and have like little mini retreats with myself in nature. But that's my church. It's different. I think that God is a lot more interwoven and widespread than a lot of churches depict. And I don't think my biggest issue with churches has always been, so with religion, there's congregation, right? That means that you would be aligning yourself with a group of like-minded individuals. And unfortunately for myself, I've not found a group that I have solely found, like we've not fully meshed. There are things that I like about some, there are things that I like about others, but I can't fully commit to any one group. So I avoid labels. I can always say, like I said, for Baptist and negative, this, that, and the other. But I can say that when I was attending Baptist services, I would more often feel a more spiritual connection there than I did in a Methodist service, because I think that Methodist services, at least in my experience, were more devoid of personality. It's almost sterile in the way that, at least my experiences with Methodist churches, they're very, very orderly and very it's different. But I mean, religion is different. Christianity is different. I mean, so many denominations, so many ways of worship. I mean, there are people in Athens that like sling snakes at each other and shit. Like no, thank you.
I think that Methodism is a lot of times compared to Catholicism, and as far as their traditions, you stand up, you sit down, you do this thing. This is the tradition. We do it, and I'm sure that people that grew up Methodist their whole lives find some sort of solace, and they do find connection in those traditions. But I mean, honestly, both of us grew up Baptist. I was at a much younger age, and my relationship with church was much more rocky. But I also have never liked this is the time when you stand up, and this is the time when you sing, and this is the time when you bow. And it's like, this is just like, I could do this with my eyes closed and feel nothing.
Right.
And that, I don't like that very much either. It feels disconnected from the point of it.
With Liv, so Liv goes to St. Paul's, which is an Episcopal church now. She likes that structure. And she explained it to me in a way that I don't disagree with, but it doesn't necessarily resonate with me fully, which was everything that is done in those services where you sit up and you sit down and you chant this and you do this, you stand this way, you turn that way, whatever. All of it is done in a way that is intentional, and all of it is traditional. These are things, all of the prayers that are being said have been said for hundreds of years and are being passed down almost like a sacred rite. And these things all have the reason that there is that emotional and spiritual connection to them is because of that ongoing connection, that lineage of spirit is connected, right? So that's why when you stand and you say this way and you sit back down, so many generations past have done the exact same thing that you're doing, and it's all connected in that way.
Yeah,
I understand that, and I don't knock it. I agree more now with Episcopals due to their, at least my experience with Episcopals thus far, more so than other denominations due to their more forward thinking. And I think that St. Paul's in specific is more in line with the teachings of Jesus. I think that it is more of service and brotherhood and taking care of your neighbor and being a good person. And my Baptist experiences focused very little on helping other people in the way that St. Paul's helps. Baptist perception of help is you got to get that dude to this altar right now, because if he dies tomorrow, he's going to hell, period. And Episcopals are like, you got to get that dude in here right now because he's on the street and he's starving.
Yeah.
So there are two different schools of thought there, I guess. And I see the value in both, I don't particularly subscribe to either one. And there are many denominations that I've not explored. I just don't know. I live in Athens, Tennessee. I only have so much exposure. There's about 12 Baptist churches and about 13 Methodist churches, and that's my exposure. We have one Catholic church, and I'm not a Catholic. I know that. So most of my relationship with religion now is where I feel the most at peace and my most calm and my most connected is when I can wake up really early and I go out into the woods by myself, and I go out and I sit and just look and take in nature, and then I meditate there. And what comes to me then is what comes to me then, and that is where I feel my most at peace. That is where I feel like I get the information that I need. While I think that there is value in Scripture, and I think that we should continue to, read the Bible, great. But like I also know that a lot of the Bible is written by man, and a lot of it is influenced by the history and politics of the time. So while yes, there's value, I don't place my whole validity in when somebody says that you have to make it to the tabernacle and you have to make sacrifice now because this is what this is. And I understand the New Testament changes that, I know. But what I'm saying is there's a lot in there that doesn't pertain to what you need right now. But there is in there that does. So I'm gonna leave it there. I just think I don't want to get, chastised or anything like that. I just think that at the end of the day, my belief is my belief, and I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna believe it, and you can go over there and you can believe yours. And I think that at the end of the day, we can both meet in the middle, and we can be successful people that help each other when we need it, and we can do the right thing, because I think that's ultimately what we should be doing in the first place. So, yeah, if I want to go sit in the woods and pray, let me go sit in the woods and pray. If you want to hand snakes back and forth to each other and scream at each other, more power to you, brother, but I ain't there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not here to tell anybody, that what you're doing or what you're not doing is wrong. But I think that whatever you are doing, I always say this, as long as it's not hurting you or others. And once that's out of the way, as long as it is fostering growth for you, then that is the best way to do it. Mm-hmm. And, I don't believe in going to church because that's what you're supposed to do. I don't believe in doing anything because that's what you're supposed to do. If I'm going to go to church, if I'm going to be a part of a denomination or even as big as a religion, I want it to be because I've chosen it and because it's helping me towards some growth goal that is especially my own. And, that can be my own under the influence of God or Christ or whoever. It can be me working towards these goals because I want to see myself in that image. But at the end of the day, this life is my own. And I want to work towards those goals for me and for my own spiritual enlightenment on the other side of this life, not because somebody tells me I have to, And I think that a lot of church has become institution and tradition and is very disconnected from that. And that's what set me on my own spiritual journey. Like I said on Scott's podcast, I may end up right back where I started, but I think that the point is for me to figure that out.
Yeah, and to add on to part of what was said, I guess what I would view myself as also is more of an inclusionist. Mm-hmm. I think that there is more, like I said, to clarify a little bit with the whole, I think that God is more interwoven than all that spiel. I think that there are different aspects of God, and that God is manifest in different ways through different people across the world, that is perceived in a way, and so on and so forth. And I think that it is more, I like to think that it is more likely, more beneficial, that a lot of those things, we're all talking about the same thing and we're calling it different things.
Yeah.
I think that that's what I say when I say inclusionist. I think that if you call it, God or Great Spirit, either way, I think that we're probably talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
So,
and I agree. And that's why right now, I'm not afraid to say that I consider myself agnostic, because I do believe in something. I believe in a higher power, and I do consider myself to be closer to Christianity, still standing right beside that belief system, but now standing outside of it and looking at it a little bit more objectively to try and determine if it's the place that I want to step back into. But I consider myself agnostic because I believe in a higher power, but I'm currently in the process of exploring, not as intentionally as I would like to be, or as disciplined as a way of I would like to be because of time. But I agree with what you're saying. I think that, all these different cultures all across the world have come to different conclusions for the belief that we have a creator and for the belief that there is something beyond this life. And that is incredibly interesting to me. And I think that it is an effort to not be self-centered, at least for me, to want to explore that. Because these people believe and I say these people, anyone that's not a Christian, people who have grown up with other religions, I'll say, have grown up with just as strong of a belief that they are doing the right thing and that they are going where they think they're going and that they believe who they believe to be their higher power just as strongly as myself or anyone else who believes in Christ and the Christian God and all the teachings of that. And I don't think that that is something to not explore in this life, you know?
And here's the thing, around here, that's an issue.
Oh, yeah.
Because like what I've said there is enough for like everybody to not like me. Like all of my family would be like, you're wrong. Like,
yeah,
that you're a hypocrite or you're whatever, you're denouncing this or whatever, you know what I mean? So like, it's not like I can just go out and explore these conversations and be like, hey, let's all just consider this. It's like, considered it, fuck you. Like, so that's, I don't know. It's very difficult to say. So I agree with what you're saying there. And from where I'm located geographically, that makes things difficult. But again, I also don't necessarily want to be categorized. I don't want to be in a group necessarily. I understand that, you know, the concept of religion or of a church, I guess, can also be tied to you have a community, which I value community. That community that you can rely on, you can lean to and look to one another in times of struggle and strife and what have you, for reassurance or for support, whatever. But I don't necessarily think that I don't want to be grouped in with anybody necessarily either, just because I feel the pressure to be in a group, just to be like, oh, yeah, I'm going to be with you guys just because I know it's not exactly what I said, but I'll be with you guys. Like, yeah. I don't feel the pressure to be like, oh, I need to be in there, please. Like, I'm good sitting in the tree. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah. And that community is very valuable. Mm-hmm. It bothers me when it turns into you're in or you're out.
Yeah. So which is unfortunately very common here.
It's very common. And I feel like it's very common in the South, and it's very common beyond religion. You know, it goes back into just the tribalistic mindset of Southern culture as a whole, of you're in or you're out, you're Republican or you're Democrat, we hate you, we love you, you're Christian or you're not, you're Baptist or you're not. I mean, it goes from the top down. You're Protestant, you're religious or you're not, you're Christian or you're not, you're Catholic or you're Protestant, you're Baptist or you're Methodist. We're going to hate you regardless. And I don't like those concepts that are based in hate. I don't think that's the way we should be looking at it. I don't think that that's the way that we were ever meant to look at religion, but I think that the structures of religion create that environment and make it very easy to do that. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that's why I say that I've never had a problem with religion. It's the human influence on religion and the way that humans manipulate religion that bothers me. And that's what's led me to explore for myself. So, yeah. Anyways, so I don't think we can end this conversation without talking a little bit about your upcoming marriage. How are you feeling about that? How's that been?
Dude, just ready for it to be done. I'm not like, you know, I don't know. Not like I'm like, oh, I can't wait to get this over with. I'm like, yeah, God, there's just so much that has to happen. You know what I mean? It's just like, you got this thing, you got that, and it just keeps adding, and you're just like, oh my God. I just want it to be the wedding and to be married. Like, I don't, there's just so much stuff. Like, and I understand, like, you know, I'm good with having, you know, the wedding, obviously, but I'm a very simple person, if that's not been made abundantly clear by the end of this conversation. Yeah. Like, I would be entirely content with it being me and Liv, and we just get married, just the two of us under a tree. I don't need an officiant to be there. If it made it legal without him, I'd be like, sure, it's me and Liv under this tree. We're shaking hands. It's an agreement. Congratulations. Like, that's, I don't need all of the, like, the show and all of this. Like, it's not, I don't necessarily, and I mean, that's the thing for me also with religion. Like, a part of it is a spectacle, and that's not what I'm there for. I'm not there because I'm like, we have a jumbotron. Like I don't care. Like, I don't care. You don't have to have air conditioning if your heart's in the right place. So it's kind of the same mindset that I've applied to the wedding. Like, I'm just happy to be marrying Liv. And that's pretty much it. Like, everything else, I'm like, whatever you want, that's what we're going to do. Because I think that aspect of the wedding is more important to her than it is to me. I want it to look nice. I don't want it to be like, hey, we're getting married in the back of a FedEx truck. Like, yeah, I get that. I want it to look nice. I want it to be this whole thing. Good. But ultimately, at the root of it all, am I marrying you? Great. That's all I need. Yeah. Like, so, yeah.
So did you all come to the agreement to make it a more traditional type wedding? Because I mean, some people do, get married in a field with just the preacher or the person making it official there.
So the way that all happened, originally, Liv was like, I want us to have a simple wedding because Liv's similar to me. She wants the simple, yeah. So we're like, cool. So we already knew that we wanted to get married outside. Like, we're both a couple of, like, just, I don't know. Hippie is not the right word. I don't necessarily think I'm a hippie, but I do like
outdoorsy.
Nature. Right, yeah.
With my granola.
In my Eno. So we're both pretty outdoorsy, and we were like, we love nature. Nature's beautiful. That's what we want to do. Where it all changed is Liv got her dress. And originally it was like, I'm going to get a simple dress for our simple wedding, and that's going to be it. But Liv found a different dress that is apparently, because I've not seen it, less simple. And that's where it changed. Liv said, I can't get married simply, and it can't all look simple if I'm sitting here looking like, I don't know what she's gonna look. I truly don't know. I don't have any insights. Not for me to know. I don't know. I just
apparently
know,
not gonna be simple though.
I know that everybody that has seen the dress is like, oh yeah, it's gonna be a bigger thing than that. I'm like, okay. So we're still getting married outside. We're still getting married under a tree. Everything else, however, like, there's going to be people, and there's going to be music, and there's going to be all these tables and lights and yada, yada, yada. It's going to be more traditional wedding in that regard because of her, I guess, more traditional dress. I don't know. But I know that because of the dress, things got tuned up. So
darn dress.
I don't know. It's whatever. If that's the dress that she wants, that's the dress she got. And if she wants the wedding to change because of that, that's fine. Yeah. I don't care. Like I said, I'm easy like Sunday morning, baby. Like, if you want me to, because originally there was talk of like, and that's the thing. She was like, the original statement was, I want to get married outside under a tree with no shoes on. That was her words. Now she's like, well, now I have to wear shoes. Like, the dress is like, I can't wear not shoes with this dress. And so it was just, I don't know. Now there's shoes, and then once shoes, and then it just all snowballed into, once you get shoes, damn it,
it's amazing.
Now you got silverware. And if you have silverware, you know what that means? You're not in a field anymore. Like,
yep.
So yeah, I don't know. We're getting married at the barn at Faith Farms. So they've got a tree set up out there. But the good news is, because we're getting married June 11th, if all goes according to plans, June 11th, if it were to rain, they have a big outdoor fireplace, like, covered area that's still technically outdoors. But that way it's not just like piss poor raining on everybody sitting there outside. Yeah. Just like so yeah, we've got contingency plans on contingency plans. So I'm super ready to be married. I'm excited for the summer. I won't have to have school in the summertime. it's going to not be, I like the cold. I don't know. I was going to say it's going to be hot. I don't necessarily want it to be hot, but I'll get to go camping. I'll get to go swimming, stuff like that. So I'm ready for the summertime. It's going to be a good one. At least I'm manifesting that. I'm like, no, it's going to be good. Like it will. So see.
Well, I know that the wedding will be fun. That's the thing about traditional weddings is there's always a sense of camaraderie and fun that comes with those. So I'm super excited.
Yep. There's going to be, instead of like, we're getting a cake, but we're also doing a ton of cupcakes.
Oh.
So we've already went and tasted those. And I was like, oh yeah. There's I got a bunch of different flavors of cupcakes. I'll have a big cake that we eat. There's going to be, I think, alcohol. I don't know. I don't drink, but so that should lend itself to fun
Somebody
times.
Will bring some.
We've been working on a music playlist that has some music that is going to make my memo blush. Like I'm pretty sure, like
don't shake that ass, bitch, and let me see.
I'm pretty sure, like Bump and Grind and like Pony by Genuine and stuff is going to be on there. And it's
which one of those two is the first dance?
I don't know.
Oh, that was supposed to be an R&B joke, but I think
I know. I couldn't figure it out. I was just like, well, and so then I was like, well, I can't figure it out. I need to come up with another joke. And then I was like, well, honestly, I was sitting there. I was going to say something about the Dixie Chicks. And I was like, wait, they're not called the Dixie Chicks anymore. And then my ADD brain was like, oh, yeah, it's this whole thing. And then I just like divulged over here. And I remember that I was still sitting here and you were waiting an answer. And I was like, man, it's only been like 15 seconds, but that's too long for this moment to continue. And I came back and then now we're here. And now you're caught up to my brain.
So what I'm hearing is that you've invited the Chicks to perform Cowboy Take Me Away live at your wedding at the barn at Faith Farms, Athens, Tennessee. Everybody's invited?
Everybody except for the people that know who they are. Like, if you know who you are, you're not invited. But other than that, there's only like, oh, that guy, the asshole with Wes, he's not invited. The asshole,
he's not invited. He knows who he is.
Yeah.
He knows who he is.
Shoe print and all right here.
You know who, okay. After this conversation, I fully expect Wes to wear those shoes to the wedding.
I bet he doesn't fit in them anymore, but I wish that he had them still.
Well, I think even if I have to do it personally, I'm going to buy those shoes a front row seat to your wedding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they were black New Balance.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, then the strings were way too long. You know what I'm talking about? The ends were frayed.
They were like you're stepping on them. Yeah.
Yep, that's Wes. Wes and his shoes.
And they're tied so tight that like the bill is like crumpled up.
Mm-hmm. It's going like this, except there's a little bit of a tongue going like over the top.
Help, dear God.
Yep. They came untied. That's why they became a weapon like that, though.
Well, let's wrap this up with what you're looking forward to, man. Once you're married, I know you'll still be in school for a few more years, but what's on the horizon that you're excited about?
So I am excited about, first of all, graduating, because then I will have a teaching job. Mm-hmm. And if I am a teacher and live as a teacher, we will make no money, but
get the summers off though.
We will be able to spend more time together. So that's the biggest thing. Like, yes, I know. And it's not like, oh, we're going to have all this free time or whatever. That's definitely not the case, because if Liv's first year of teaching has taught me anything, is it is not all sunshine and roses the way that people think that it is. I've seen the work. I've been through it. I've walked her through it and been here with her as she's had to go through all the heartache of all of the work that goes into it. And it's a doozy. But I am looking forward to being able to have a schedule where I'll see the sun. That's positive. And then eventually, next few years or so, we try to start having a family, which is going to be cool, because if she and I are both on a schedule that is consistent, the way the teacher is going to be consistent, not like, hey, I need you to work thirds this weekend because No, I'm gonna be off. Me and Liv, and we're gonna have a little bean sprout of a child about that big.
Stay that big too.
Yep, that big. This 47-year-old man right here. He's like, so yeah, that's something to look forward to. That's not at any capacity on the horizon. Like, we got to get through school and do all the other stuff first. But there's that. Someday I might go back to school and get beyond a bachelor's degree. I've considered at some point. I wouldn't be opposed to teaching at like a university level or something like that. That's like, we're in the end game now kind of stuff. Like that's like, that's going to be a ways off, but that's one that I've contemplated the idea, and I'm not just opposed to it. I'm like, yeah, I could, because I mean, if I'm teaching history and each grade or whatever of history is just more focused, if this is elementary history and this is middle school history, this is high school history, this is college history, and right in there is the shit that I'm interested in.
Yep.
Like the more focused that it gets, that's what I'm about. I would love to do something with Native American history or specifically Appalachian history, stuff like that. A lot of stuff that doesn't get widespread exposure that is truly fascinating.
Hell yeah. You get into teaching at the college level, you can teach those things for fun as an elective. So
I would be about that.
That's the goal.
Write me a paper on popcorn Sutton.
There you go.
What kind of stupid paper that would be.
Well,
man.
I don't even know how long we've been going on, but
I don't know either. It's been Walker's birthday party was 15 minutes ago.
Nice. We're about, I guess we're around, well, maybe just an hour and a half because we got started a little bit late, but regardless, good ass conversations, lots of subjects covered. Looking forward to being by your side as you develop into Nathan the Family Man.
Absolutely, too.
So happy for you and Liv. Can't wait to be in June to stand by your side while you get to experience that too.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I'm excited to be able to bring you on and do this podcast with you, man. I know that you got a busy schedule right now, and I can very much empathize with that because I've been there too, but excited to be able to do this with you too as soon as we can.
Absolutely. Hopefully we get on a scheduling where it's like sporadic or periodic enough, and I'd be able to come on frequently, because it is something that I would be truly interested in doing. However that takes form or anything like that, I just think that this is interesting. I like to be able to sit here and talk with you. So yeah, hopefully at some point in the not so distant future.
We're going to do it, man.
That's it.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Adios, mi amigo.
See you, dog.